we are going to get started, or go ahead and start working towards getting started. Hi everybody, welcome. My name is Cheyenne Ketchum. I am the Public Information Officer for the City of Southport. I work in the Department of Community Relations, so we are super excited to have y'all here with us today. Excuse me. Again, hi to everybody in the audience, everybody at home, hello, thank you for tuning in. And welcome to the first installment of the Southport Symposium. We're super excited to be starting this event with everybody and bring this to you each month through the remainder of the year. Couple things, we're doing the welcome now, so we'll just go ahead and strike that one. We're gonna go over some housekeeping materials. Please hold your questions until the end of each section. So all of these ladies have their own portion, and then we're going to do questions for that portion at the end of them, and then we'll do additional questions at the very end in case we have any questions that come up that we forgot to ask, things of that nature. Please keep the questions relevant to the departments featured. So we do have City Manager Bonnie Theron, Assistant City Manager Dorothy Dutton, HR Director Patty Fortuna, and Animal Protective Services Director Kate Marshall. So those are going to be the departments, the entities that we are discussing today. And without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started with Bonnie and Dory.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to see everyone here today. This is the first in a series of sessions we're going to have once a month. It's a lot of times it's called like a Citizens Academy, but it's for you to learn about city government, how we operate, how we do things. I know in the past when I've worked in other communities, it's interesting when you get a group of people together that they have really no idea how things work, or what happens with their trash, or anything like that. So I think this is very informative for others to learn how we function and to listen to you about things we could even improve on. I do want to say that we will take questions. We will answer everything that we can. If we don't know an answer, we'll get back to you, I promise you. And I want to get started, and we'll start with the city manager's office. Nope, I'm going down. It's not moving. All right, so I've had over 30 years experience in local government. I never even heard of a city manager until I was in college. I grew up in a strong mayor form, Springfield, Mass., and so I never heard of a city manager. And I was taking a master's in public administration, and the professor started talking about types of government and mentioned the city manager, and I thought, well, that certainly makes sense to have somebody who has professional experience, helping the elected officials run the town and give ideas for policies and making things very efficient and effective. So I ended up going from the job at the college where I was working and took an assistant's job right over the border in Connecticut. And most of my career has been in Connecticut. I've worked in a community as big as the deputy city manager for Hartford, Connecticut, the capital, all the way to a smaller communities that was probably 7,000 or 8,000. I was also the first town manager in Berlin, which is an interesting role because they're switching forms of government and a lot of people don't necessarily want you there. So that was very, very illuminating, should I say. And it only passed by 60 votes. So later on, the elected body at the time decided that they wanted to go back to the other form of government. And so I'm sitting there thinking, oh, well, this could be the end of your job. And it overwhelmingly passed 3-1 to keep manager form of government. So I was like, oh, and they still have it to this day. So I was very happy with that. So basically the way that Southport is set up is you have a mayor who's elected for a 2-year term. Then the mayor pro tem is appointed by the rest of the board, and then you have a 6-member board of aldermen that are elected for 4 years in a ward system. And so currently the board sets policy. I always tell people who don't understand what a city manager is, it's just like a private company. So I'm the CEO, and the board of directors is the elected body. And just like in a private company, the board of directors decides on what policies they want that company to work on, and then they ask the CEO to make sure it gets implemented. And it's the same thing here in local government. The whole thought of a manager form of government, which, by the way, is the most popular form of government in the country, is to split off the elected political end of things, especially for the staff, from the professional CEO who ends up implementing that policy. So the city manager is appointed by the board, and it's the form of government that is, the way it's set up here is much like North Carolina general statutes. And the mayor only votes when there's a tie. So the pros and cons of a city manager position. The positive aspects, the city manager is the chief executive officer, as I just mentioned, the mayor and aldermen of the board of directors, so it ends up running like a business, so it becomes very efficient and focused. The manager has a professional background, he has an education. I have a public administration and a criminal justice master's, so usually you're very familiar with local government matters, the legalities, finances, how to put together a budget, and best practices throughout the country. So, because we have an international city and county managers association, and we, as we say, we borrow each other's ideas every day. Because if you see something that somebody's doing and it goes, wow, that would work great for Southport, then obviously we take that and we bring it to this community. It takes politics out of the day-to-day activities. One thing I always tell the staff is a good city manager is there to protect you from politics. And so everybody goes through the city manager, the elected officials, if they need something. In fact, Lo called me today and said, would you mind if I talk to somebody who's over the electrical? I said, no, that's not a problem at all, but at least I know that she went to them, so if there's no follow-up, then I know, I've got to follow up. So it's not, it's not a control thing as much as I want to make sure people are getting the answers they need to their questions and to their issues. So that way, the staff is protected from all the political too. The manager has oversight on hiring, any disciplinary matters, all of that. Also allows the mayor and the aldermen to concentrate on policy because, working on policy takes a lot of time. And instead of having to work on things, administratively, they can just work on policy, things that they want to see, make sure they're getting back to their constituents. And I think that's the way it works best. It allows consistency of government. So if you have a change in the elected body, then there's the manager still there to carry on the projects and bring things forward to the new elected officials. I was in one community where every single council member lost. And so we had a brand new group, new mayor, new everybody. And instead of having to reinvent the wheel, we went and we did a whole orientation with them about here's everything we've been working on. So there was consistency in making sure that the projects kept going. And part of our code of ethics as managers, because we do have a code of ethics, is we have to be nonpartisan and we are not involved with politics whatsoever. So we do not do anything with elections. We stay out of that completely. Now, some of the negative aspects is some people will say, well, you're not selected. I didn't vote for you. In fact, I get that all the time. I don't like what you're saying, so I'm not going to vote for you next time. That's what I get. And it's kind of like, well, that's nice, but you didn't vote for me to begin with. So a lot of people don't like that. They feel that they should be voting on the appointment as well as the removal of a city manager, but that is completely up to the Board of Aldermen. A lot of times the public doesn't feel as connected to an appointed official versus an elected person because they know that elected person really well, usually because they're in the community a lot. A lot of people feel the cost of a city manager and any additional position is seen as a duplicate by the taxpayers. Well, you know, we're paying the mayor who really doesn't get hardly anything, and so why are we going to pay you? I think it slows the action of getting things done. Some people would say as there's another layer of bureaucracy, but I see it more as making sure that professionally there's checks and balances that happen. And that's my role, is to make sure those checks and balances are going through. Again, they will say the hiring of a city manager should not be made by the elected officials, but should be made by the public. And that is not, I've never seen them, city managers are always selected by the elected body. And also they feel, sometimes people say, it takes time to become acquainted, you know, with city manager, but I try to be out there so that the public does see me and gets to know me, so hopefully you don't run into that issue. Dory, I'm going to have Dory, the Assistant City Manager, come up. This is the organizational chart, so that she'll go through that and then tell you about her role.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending today. We're all very excited to have you here. Just as a reminder, when it's time for you all to ask questions, if you would please come, up to the podium so that it can be recorded as well. That would be great. So the organizational chart recently has been changed since I was promoted to the Assistant City Manager position. But at the head of our organization is the mayor and the Board of Aldermen. And then, excuse me, the city attorney kind of works in conjunction with all the departments, but mainly is responsive to the city manager and to the mayor and board of aldermen. When I assumed this position as assistant city manager, I became under the direction of the city manager, and then we also have a deputy clerk and administrative assistant. So as my role, I'm going to be supervising over the community relations department, development services, and animal protection services, and Ms. Bonnie will take over, or still those other departments will report directly to her, which is the police, the fire department, finance, human resources, public services, and parks and recreation. So I'll jump over and just talk about myself for a minute. I have about 13 years of local government experience. I started out, my first municipal job was with Hope County Tax Collections. I then took a position with Moore County in the permitting office, where I was experienced in floodplain and kind of grew in my skill set, started doing some of the planning work as well. Then I accepted a position with the town of Carthage, where I was the city clerk and development administrator. So I've completed many certifications, including the floodplain manager program, certified zoning official, certified municipal clerk, and I'm also a notary. My degree is nothing to do with local government at all. It's human development and family studies, and it still relates to everything dealing with the public. Hindsight's always 20/20, but I do plan on going back and get my master's degree. And as part of my job with the city, or with the town of Carthage, I also planned like our fall festival, and we had a buggy festival back home, and that brings in almost 20,000 people. So I have over 20 years of customer service experience, but my favorite is definitely local government. I really feel like my passion is people. So I love working with the public and helping them, providing services, and help however I can. Oops. So as the assistant city manager, I basically act as an extension of Bonnie in her position to ensure that policies and ordinances are followed by staff and the public. perform a high-level administrative, technical, professional work, including reviewing bids for needed work, maintaining the master list, and updating the capital projects list, which we're going to go over. And I also help make suggestions for policy and ordinance amendments. I consider myself, I guess, part of the brain trust with the administration and review a lot of the plans and ideas with the city manager, elected officials, and staff. As I mentioned, I'll be overseeing the development services, animal protective services, and community relations departments. I prepare reports, contracts, and coordinate between several departments and outside agencies. And in the temporary absence of the city manager, I would preside over the day-to-day operations. As part of this position, I have started, or I was kind of already doing a lot of the project coordination and bringing all the different groups together to find the right path. And I'm also excited to work with Bonnie this year on the budget process. And I'm still wearing the city clerk hat. So it's one of the few positions that's actually legislatively stated as required. My main role is to keep full and accurate detail of all the goings on of the board proceedings, including votes and attendance. I keep the main copies of all the official ordinances, policies, and other documents that are approved from the board. I can administer oaths when needed. I set and make sure all the notices are sent out to the public and in the publications when they're supposed to be. And each type of notice has a different statute of requirement. So certain ones have to go out twice, certain other types will go out just once. I also complete or try to complete in a timely manner all the requests for information. I think our paperwork in the ordinance states in a reasonable amount of time, so I try to get those taken care of. I have to make sure that during the board meetings that all the rules are being followed, and if it's a closed session, no one's there that shouldn't be, or if the public hearing is closed, that we're not supposed to keep going on with that. I also help to handle the annexation requests that we have and certify the sufficiency of the request. It's all part of the main process. The clerk has to accept the application and make sure that it is within the state requirements as far as distance to our city limits. Report information to the state and federal government as required by law. This includes annexations, resolutions to our state representatives, and then all official copies for the public to review. And I also am overseeing the deputy clerk's duties. And that's about it for that. So next, we do have capital improvement projects. I don't think that's in here. There was copies available at the front if you wanted to go over that with us. We have a lot going on in Southport now. These are not in any particular order right now, but the shoreline stabilization project, we are currently having or about to have surveys done of our waterfront area, and then we're going to seek ways to make that area stronger. We have a lot of sewer projects right now, wastewater. One is the pump station rehab. They are collecting their data now. The sewer replacement, that's part of the USDA project on the western side of the city primarily. And Wooten was the engineer that's selected for that. They are currently doing their surveys of the area. The merger feasibility study, we are working with the county on that, and Wooten Engineering again. Have to make sure that our engineers have all the information they need. The Mulberry Branch sewer plant expansion. This one is a big one, but we are funding the expansion of the wastewater treatment station in Charlotte, and right now we're having so much fun trying to find $29 million. Also, as a part of that, we did request ARPA funding, but we won't have an idea if we were selected for that funding until around February 21st. The kayak launch, I know everyone's very excited to know that that is moving forward. It should be about 18 months from start to finish once we actually get all of our CAMA permits and can move forward. Taylor Field and the dog park, I know everyone's definitely waiting for that. There were some issues with the bathroom area, the facility, and the floodplain. So I'm waiting on revised elevation certificates for that, and then hopefully we will be able to have our final inspections. In 2021, there was a capital project ordinance adopted that was going to cover several different projects. So we still have funding available, about $500,000 left, to help pay for some more projects, which would include the road repairs, House Street sidewalk, Kingsley Pier, Yacht Basin, pedestrian corridor, and things like that. Those are ongoing. We have a shoreline Yacht Basin dredging project that the board approved funding to hire a surveyor to do that work, so that's kind of where we're at now. And then for stormwater, we have an application in for the plan and for the construction, and we will not know if we were awarded funding until that February 21st deadline. The fire department is working on securing funding for emergency communication systems and extrication equipment. FEMA reimbursements is always ongoing, and there's a lot of red tape that goes into that. I just had a meeting on Friday with one of the FEMA representatives, but hopefully we will be moving forward with at least Kingsley Park reconstruction. One of the other grants we applied for through the ARPA funding is the Find and Fix, or the Inflow and Infiltration project that will identify any leaks in our wastewater treatment, where stormwater might go, or just leaking out, and then we have to send it to the county to be processed, and that's just a waste of money, basically. The weather tower is something that our mayor is sponsoring, and that just to raise the funding to place the weather tower back at the Garrison Lawn, I believe, where it was. There's a lead and copper rule revision project where we have to identify all the copper and lead piping that carries our water, and all those pipes have to be identified and replaced with something that's not hazardous. And then of course we have our feasibility study for our police and city hall. Our staff is growing, and so we need a lot more room to expand. We think at this point our police department will get a new building, and city hall staff can spread out a little bit more. Is that any? Oh, and I haven't added to the sheet yet, but we do have, we were just donated $8,000 from the Lions Club, and Parks and Recreation's coming up with the extra $2,000 to go into the Boundless Playground. It's supposed to be phase 2 at Taylor Field. And in case you all don't know, it's like an all-inclusive park. So not only will children with disabilities be able to play, but children that don't have disabilities and parents will be able to play all together on the equipment, which they don't often get that experience. That does it. And if you all have questions, you just, take one at a time.
Yeah, we're going to do presentations first.
We'll do individual questions after.
Yeah.
I think we're doing questions for the city manager and assistant city manager's office now.
Yes, that is correct. So folks, if y'all have any questions, please remember, just head up to the podium. That way the folks that are at home watching know the questions that you're asking in case they have similar ones.
I can address a couple that were given to us already. One said, could there be a show of hands when aldermen are voting? Actually, we're now going to go to roll call. So, because we've noticed it too, that people don't know who voted. Even Dory, as a city clerk, can't hear what people are saying, so we're just going to do roll calls. And Dory will do that so everybody will know what the votes were by whom. So.
I have one question. If someone notices a hazard such as tripping or falling, who should it be reported to? I have taken a couple of calls like that myself, and we also have code enforcement, Chris Martin, who could take that complaint for you and then submit it to the right department. If it's something public services can help with, we usually do try to get them that information as soon as possible. And if we need to have our police, of course, police officers come out, they can meet you on site to investigate the situation.
Cheyenne, there's also a place on the website that people can go to and fill out something, and Cheyenne makes sure it gets to the right department.
Yes, and that form can be found on the homepage under popular searches at the very bottom of every single web page underneath the quick contact form, and it can also be found on the development services page as well.
So we will take any questions. We will answer anything you want to know about city manager and assistant. Yes, sir. Yes, February 27th at 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock actually, because there's going to be an update on a number of projects. It'll be here at 3 o'clock with the board. The first item on the agenda is an update on the shoreline stabilization. And then at 4 o'clock, we're having a public information session with all the consultants about all the sewer projects that are on that list. So if you're interested in any of that, again, the 27th, 4 o'clock. Here.
The family tree. Okay, I understand that Bonnie, as city manager, is your manager, Dory. Is that correct? As the assistant, yes. And you have, it appears to me, 3 areas that you supervise under the supervision of the city manager as well, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so one of those is the Development Services Director, who is Travis. And Travis, then in the line up here, is over planning, code enforcement, building inspections, and permitting technicians. And since I'm sure everybody in Southport, and especially at the City Hall by now, knows that my particular interest is the cemeteries. At the present time, our building inspector is also the superintendent of cemeteries. So therefore, he is under direct supervision by Travis, and then by you, and then by Bonnie, and then by the Board of Aldermen. So I just wanted to be sure that that's the way it's going, and even though at this particular time and over the past many years, it appears that there has been no direct supervision in the cemeteries, that perhaps that is something that now we have folks lined up and ready to work in these areas, that we can look at either helping Mr. Barefoot, who is the building inspector, to be able to do that job as well, or to find someone else to do that. So that's my hope.
I'm looking at B, because I've never seen a building inspector in charge of that, and it shouldn't be like that. He's got enough to do. So I've already asked Dory and Travis to give me suggestions, and we will work together to get that moved over to somebody else, because it's not Kylie Barefoot's fault, but he's got too many other things on his plate, and I need somebody to concentrate more on it.
Right. Good, and I agree completely. And in the newsletter that went out a couple of years ago when he was hired, he said he was very surprised to find out that that was his job after he got here.
That's not a part of a typical building inspector. Don't be shy. Well, you might think of something. Patty, you want to go on with human resources? Because we'll stay here if you'd rather just even ask one-on-one.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I am new to the city of Southport, so I thought it important, to tell you a little bit about me. I have been in HR for 30 or more years. I've been in the private sector most of that time. This is the first experience I have with the public. I've worked on both the East and West Coast. Shortly after college, I was relocated out to California, so that was a really good challenge for being a human resource professional at that time. California is a really different place from over here. I provided HR support typically as like a regional level to big box retail. That was the majority of my experience. And then I went into specialty retail, clothing stores, that type of thing, and then a restaurant, and then even C-store and fuel stores. So pretty broad range of experience. My specialty has always been employee relations, and really reason why I got into HR, because I love people. I love to see people's successes and help them get there. So I moved to Southport in April, and then shortly thereafter was hired in September, so at the city. So it's just been awesome. I love the people, and I'm really excited to be here. It is a unique opportunity for me because it is a department of one. That is way different than my past. HR has always offered me different challenges, and this is going to be one of them. So my plan is not to always be a department of one. Hopefully we will build that department in time. And add head count. Oops. So some of the focuses right now, and there's a lot. I think somebody said it was a colossal job when I started. One of the main ones right now is recruitment and retention. As we all know, there's a hiring crisis across the country. So it's really critical that we find the people with the right skills in that right position. And then we have to retain those people. So to help in that, we purchased in November, pretty much after I started, we purchased NeoGov. And that is going to help automate our hiring and onboarding process. It really will streamline recruitment, hiring, onboarding, and it makes us more efficient and also more professional when people go and apply for the jobs on the website. Another key area is our culture. So we recently have put engagement surveys in place, and it really gives a true measure of the connection employees have towards their work, their team, and the overall organization. It gives them a voice. And then we can put a plan in place to act on the areas of opportunity. And really, it's just creating that open door as well. So also working on performance management, and that's a process. But again, it's going to ensure our employees are given the resources they need to develop, and then the recognition they deserve to be motivated, and then the accountability to know what's expected of them. Compliance, that's a big one for HR. I'm sure you're all aware. Employment laws and adhering to labor laws, it's always changing. And to help, with that, for me, I've been a member of the Society for Human Resources for years and years and years, and that always helps. And then I've just recently, to help with the public piece of it for me, enrolled in public employment law. And that starts actually next week and goes for about 8 weeks. Employee relations, next on the list. Like I said, that's my favorite, near and dear to my heart. It's really about building relationships and then, you know, building that positive work environment. I used to have a boss that said, you know, HR people are just way too warm and fuzzy. But you know, really, in this day, we have to figure out what makes our employees happy, where they're motivated in their positions, and how they work best. And that's what the employee relations piece is. It's also about, you know, if there's allegations, investigations, that, and you know, acting on those in a timely manner is always important. So it all goes kind of hand in hand. So again, employee relations is a big part of the life of HR. And then last but not least, compensation. It's, you know, really about the compliance with the FLSA, and the public employment law class is going to help with that for me. And then just making certain our offers for employment are fair and consistent, and making sure that we are complying with all the regulations. So, any questions?
I don't think Patty had mentioned it, but she's the first HR director. So that's the hard part, is she's starting everything fresh. And so she has a lot of work on that she's got to do. There is no policies, procedures. If there are, they're outdated. So she's had a lot to handle since she came on board in October, and still, you know, she's still smiling.
And I will.
Any questions for Patty at all?
One question. How does HR provide a safe space so that employees can share concerns? And it's like what I said, the engagement surveys help with that, and always having an open door policy so that they can have a confidential conversation and, you know, have that voice.
Anybody else? All right, Kate, looks like you're up.
There's Patty's contact information. Hi, my name's Kate Marshall. I'm the Animal Protective Services Officer for the City of Southport, and this is my section of the symposium. Welcome. I'm glad you're here. So Animal Protective Services, also known as APS Department, because sometimes that's a mouthful. Kate Marshall. I am a certified Animal Protective Services Officer and a certified animal cruelty investigator. So North Carolina as a state does not have any certifications. It kind of goes as state by state basis. So NACA developed a nationwide certification, and now they're branching out. So I'm very proud to have those. This is the mission statement you'll find on the website for Animal Protective Services. To promote an environment of responsible pet ownership by protecting the safety and welfare of Southport's animals and citizens. That's basically it in a nutshell, and it kind of breaks it down a little bit more. I think my favorite part is we strive to foster an improved human-animal bond through progressive animal welfare initiatives, community outreach, humane education, and a culture of compassion and integrity. So that's my goal. So there's a little agenda. I'm going to go over department as a whole, some of our ordinances, wildlife, and some frequently asked questions. And that's a shameless plug of my dog, Augie, there. That's the weather tower behind there. And actually, that was taken before I even got hired, when I first moved here. So the first thing I always like to go over, I get this question almost every day, is where is my jurisdiction? So I am over animal welfare ordinances within the Southport city limits. So this is a rough draft. This is an older zoning map. So you can kind of tell, I like to easily say it's basically from Walmart to the water. That's basically the boundaries of Southport. We have some really strange areas that are part of the ETJ, which is overseen by Brunswick County Sheriffs, and then which means that their APS officers have to come in and handle those areas. We do work really well together because obviously I'm way quicker. If there's an animal injured, I can get to it first. But so that's basically how it has to be. And we have River Mist and then the Southport crossings. So that's where I can help. People, I can always get them help if they call me from other places, and of course then I refer them up to the county. So APS department was taken, separated from the police department in 2018, and that's when I was hired. Previously to that, we had a police officer that was assigned his police officer duty. He was also the animal control officer, and he was also code enforcement. So that was a whole lot for one person to do. And there became issues with time in each position, in each area. So the Board of Aldermen at the time decided to separate that and make it its own department. So that's when I came on board. So I've been a department of one until last year. So there's hope, Patty. So I have one on-call employee because basically I would answer phone calls. Mainly, my main job is on the weekends and after hours if the police have an issue. So I was answering those calls. So they decided I got a little bit of help. So once a month, I've got somebody that takes call for me so I can take a break. The city does not have an animal shelter. So we don't have an animal shelter per se. We don't have adoptions, not like what you find up on Brunswick County. Theirs is on Green Swamp Road. So any long-term holds of any animals, cats, dogs, I have to transfer up to them. When I became Animal Protective Services, it was a challenge because they would tell me to, I'd have to go pick up a dog and then I didn't have anywhere to put it. So do I drive it up to the county? By the time I got up to the county, the owner called and said, hey, that's my dog. So I drive it all the way back. So I did a little troubleshooting and I found a temporary holding facility. It's basically a kennel and it's got a fence around it, and that our partnership with River Road Animal Hospital, they've got a large piece of property that's on River Road, so they were gracious enough to allow me for free to put the building out there. So that's where I have dogs, and I can take them out there. I usually hold them for about 48 hours, and by that time, Facebook is helpful, and they get the animals, I can get the animals home. The cats, I inherited a cat condo also from River Road after the hurricane, and that has been in various locations, but I'm proud to say that that's a picture of my new building. I'm now at 111 North Rhett Street. I actually have my own building, and I can have all my stuff in one place. So that's where the cat condo is located. And again, it's temporary, so anything long-term, then I transfer up to the county. So I handle all animal-related calls for service within the city of Southport, which can range anywhere from squirrels and pelicans to alligators, dogs, cats. So that was another surprise when I was hired here. They're like, you're going to focus on dogs and cats. And then the alligators calls started coming in, and I was like, wait a minute. So I had to learn. Where I'm from, they didn't have alligators, so. I also do a lot of community outreach. So we've got some great activities that are annual activities. Sydney's Halloween Bowser Bash, that's held at Halloween. That's always a lot of fun. It's out on the Garrison lawn. Great costume contests. We've got Pet Pictures with Santa as part of Winterfest. That's always a lot of fun. Last year was our first free vaccination clinic. So through a grant, I was able to get vaccinations for dogs and cats, as well as free rabies. So that was great. And my goal next year, actually, and that we were able to give out microchips as well. So that was a great event. And we're gonna do that again this year as soon as we can get that organized. I'm also proud of the center picture there is we partnered with Possibility, and we donate, there's a donation station here in Southport. It's on the Indian Trail Meeting Hall at 113 East Moore. People can drop off pet food. You can drop off any extra pet food, canned food, whatever it is. And my friend Elizabeth Miller, to my right, it was her idea, because she was going and helping out at the food pantry for people. And people would come in and they were trying to find food that they could get to take home so they could share that with their pets. She thought, what a great thing, a need is to have them come there and not have to share food or take food away from themselves or their kids. They can come and get pet food. So I do know when we had our pet pictures with Santa every year, we always donate that money towards the pet pantry. And I believe at Christmas last year, there was 18,000 pounds of food that they went through in 1 month. So it's a great thing, and at least twice, 2 or 3 times a week, I'll go up there, and that's full of food, and I take it over again to River Road, and then Elizabeth comes and picks it up and takes it up to where it's distributed. I also do Nature Fest. That's a great coexist with wildlife. As well as some other, I've gone into HOAs. I can go into HOAs. I went to River Mist last year and gave them a talk on alligators. They are the alligator capital of Southport, and so they've got them everywhere, and they had a lot of concerns, so I was able to go in and educate them about that. I do community cat sessions, and I help some of the groups around here do trap, neuter, release. So some of the main parts that I cover, and this is the main reason why any municipality anywhere in the country has APS. We used to be called dog catchers, but we don't like that term anymore because we've grown and we are doing a lot more. And then it was animal control, and then we're like, we didn't like that either, so the most politically correct is Animal Protective Services. But the main job is rabies. That's the whole reason the government got those positions. So rabies, it's required by North Carolina state law for all dogs, cats, and they recently added ferrets. Over 4 months of age have to be vaccinated for rabies. And that's also a state statute that all pets must wear their rabies tags at all times and be able to produce a rabies certificate. So something about that, we've had people comment, they don't like that, can we change it? One thing about ordinances within the city, it first comes state law. So state law comes first, and then the ordinances. I can be more restrictive than state law, but I cannot be less restrictive. So I can't say, well, no, in Southport you don't have to wear your tags, because North Carolina says, no, you have to enforce that. My other main job is animal bites. So anytime you're bitten by an animal and you go for help to a doctor, it's required by law that they contact the health department, and then the health department will then reach out, or they will call us directly, either police department or APS. And then I'll investigate. And the main deal for that is the whole making sure the animal that bit you, if I'm able to locate it, is current on vaccinations. And regardless of vaccination status, there's still a mandatory 10-day quarantine period. So if your dog is current, we can do an in-home quarantine. If your dog is not current, or cat, then it needs to go up to the Brunswick County Animal Shelter for the quarantine there. And that again is mandated by state law. Pet licensing, City of Southport has had a pet licensing on the books forever. I was able to find a company called DocuPet that can take care of all of that online. When I got here, people would come and I'd issue them this little tag, and file would go in a box, and so someone would call and they found an animal and they have all these numbers, and I had no way to figure out who belonged to who. So this is way more convenient. Plus there's also a home safe program. So there's a unique identifier on that tag. So if you find the dog, it's not like you have to look up a rabies. You just call that number, call the number on the thing, give them the identification number, and they'll tell you who the owner is, and we can get the dogs home faster, which is the main thing we want to do, home again. It's a nominal fee, $15 if your dog or cat and ferret is neutered or spayed, and $25 if they are not. I should have mentioned this the other night when I spoke before the Board of Aldermen. So those fees for the pet licensing, those fees are a revenue item for my department. That money comes back into my department and I can allocate it in different places. I use it for trap neuter release program. We also, I have a voucher program. If there's people in town that can't afford vaccinations, if they can't afford to get their pet neutered or spayed, they can come to me, and then I have a voucher program. I can help them with that. So to me, it gives a lot of benefits. So you have a home safe, you're able to get your pet home. That money comes back into APS, so to me it's like a donation. You're donating, and then that money goes back out into the community. A little bit about our animal welfare ordinance. We updated it. It's Chapter 3. It's now called Animal Welfare Ordinance. Again, because we like to promote that. So I've got some key points. It was adopted in 2019, a complete rewrite, and it was recently updated in February of 2023. And throughout that time, there's also been little tweaks to it. So again, like Karen Mostert-Lara always likes to say, it's a living, breathing document. And as we find ways we need to change our ordinances, we continually do that. Some of the things that we were pretty proud of, leashes. Leashes are required for maintaining control and leading a dog. So as, I don't know if you noticed, before I started, people were walking their little dogs, running around. They had no leashes on them. She told me her dogs are voice controlled. Well, that's not kosher. Can't do that here. Voice command is, it's okay if you're in your backyard and that, but if you're out in public, the leash is the best way to maintain control. So we actually changed the definition to say that the leash had to be from the animal to the person. I have people that have their dogs on leashes, and I'll say, hey, there's a leash law, and they'll say, oh, well, my dog is on a leash. It's like, well, now I was like, well, you have to be holding the other end of it. So there you go. We require now pets must be secured while riding in golf carts and in the open area vehicles. Prior to this, I worked at River Road Animal Hospital. I should say I came to Southport area about 7 years ago, and I have a background as a vet tech. So I was working with there, and there was 2 dogs. One was over in Bald Head, was thrown from their golf cart and sustained life-threatening injuries. The dog didn't make it. And it was, the dog was thrown and someone ran over it. Things happen. Dogs get ejected out of the back seat of pickup trucks. So it's very important that the owners realize they have to be secure. It's for their safety too as well. If you're driving and it jumps out, it's not good. And also, it was never officially on the books, but we do not allow pets left in hot cars. That's actually a minimum $500 fine, and you'll charge with animal cruelty. There's no warnings, there's nothing. I mean, you're written up for it. We do have a lot of tourists that come through. They'll park at the restaurants, leave their dog in a car. I do try and educate them. I'll try and track down the owner. And, I also have a heat gun. So I'll bring them. Last summer, I brought the guy back, and the back of the pickup or the SUV was open, but the sun was directly in. So the temperature of his dog was like 200 degrees. And he was like, well, the window was open. I thought he was fine. So that was a little bit of education. And our restaurants are more than, happy to accommodate pet-friendly. So he put the dog on a leash, took it up, and he had to sit outside. So just, in those cases, it's like, listen, you have to do a little bit of education. There's a lot of people that like to shop at Walmart in the summertime. They take their pets with them. They roll up the windows, leave a little crack, and then they go in and shop. And they'll say, I was gone 5 minutes. Well, 5 minutes in Walmart, there's no such thing. So things like that. So this is very important that people know that they, and again, it's a lot of education. So another very important one that we were able to pass is our tethering law. So prior to the animal welfare update, people were allowed to tie their dogs up to trees, and mainly this came from chaining. Most parts of the country are going away from dogs and chains. Some people thought it was a status to have their dog on a chain tied to the fence or tied under a tree. So we're like, and they leave them out there 24/7. So we came in, and that was one of the main things the Board of Aldermen says, we want to get rid of that. So there is no tethering in Southport. So this is somebody in town that had the doghouse. Now that's actually a pretty good doghouse, but the dog is not in the picture because he had the chain attached to him and he was like a couple blocks away. He had gotten loose and he just wanted to run. So that took a while to catch the dog. I had a conversation with the owner, explained we don't allow chains on dogs. You can't tether them and leave them outside. It's not allowed. So you can have your dog outside for up to 3 hours if you come home from work and you put him on a runner and the dog's outside doing his business, that's fine. Just to leave him out there 24/7, we don't allow. So after some education and a little bit of help with voucher programs, we were able to get him the fencing. So it's still an outdoor dog, but now the dog doesn't have to be chained up. He has free movement. And we're also lucky enough to upgrade. Now, the little dog, Titan, was way taller than that building. He was a big old pit bull. The requirement now for shelter is if an animal goes in, he has to be able to turn all the way around and stand up without being, crushed in. It needed to be up off the ground because when it rained, that was just a big, huge mud pit. So that is much better. We were able to, again, raise some money. We had our Alderman Lombardi built a fantastic doghouse out of some donated materials. So Titan probably had one of the best outdoor, it looked like a tiny house. So he was living life. So that's just, again, a little bit of education, helping somebody out financially and explaining. And afterwards, the owner was like, you're right. He is much happier. So we made Titan's life a lot better. Community cat program, there was another challenge thrown at me when I took the job, is the feral cats. So the first thing anybody told me when I came here is like, oh my gosh, Southport there's feral cats everywhere. You have to do something about them. So I was like, well, yeah, I can take this on. I have some previous experience. I was up in Ohio. I was a humane officer for a rural county, the entire county of Medina County. So I was like, I think I can do this. And I'm thinking if I drive around, I was waiting to see like cats falling out of trees and coming at me on the side. I didn't know what to expect. I was like, the problem's really not that bad. So we instituted a community cat program, changing the ordinance, which was actually a big deal. The prior ordinance was there was a cat in your yard, you could call somebody, they drive up, put the cat in a trap, and took it away. Well, where did it go? Well, it went to the animal shelter, and the animal shelter, of course, is overrun. Outdoor cats, feral cats, we don't like to call them that, again, politically correct, community cat, they're not adoptable. You can't put them in a cage and have somebody come up and interact and want to adopt them. So they were 99% of the time the animals were euthanized. And that's not what we're in the business of doing. So the community cat program, Trap, Neuter, Release, is spreading like wildfire throughout the United States. And it's widely accepted. We can do it on the books, on our ordinances. Other areas do it off the books because it cuts down on the intake into the shelters. So Brunswick County Animal Shelter is run very well. I get along great with them. They do a fantastic job up there. They are the best, actually one of the best in the state for adoption rates, how quickly they get their animals adopted. Even hard to place, certain breeds are older adult cats, they do a great job. But it all comes down to managed intake. So you can't really, and they are a no-kill shelter. So the term no-kill is actually meant to describe the amount of animals that come in versus go out. So an open admission facility like Brunswick County is, they have to take anybody's animal, no questions asked, that walk up into the door. So a lot of times that's some pretty serious conditions. It could be animal sick. So what no kill actually means is at least like a 90% release rate. So there are animals, whether they're ill, whether they're unadoptable, that are euthanized. That's just the reality of the animal shelter world. Different groups like SOAR and that are plausibility, those rescues. Rescues have the luxury of saying we're no kill. They choose what comes in and then they adopt all those out. An open admission shelter like Brunswick County, it's impossible to do. But they do not euthanize for space, so it's not like there's a time clock. There are still places in the United States, time clock, after 10 days, you're not adopted, you're done. So we should be very proud of that in our area, and most of North Carolina is also like that. So that back to the cats, that was a whole thing, you just get overrun. So managed intake on our part, and the biggest thing is getting cats neutered and spayed. So that cuts down on the population. We've got tons of information over there on the community cat program, the benefits of it. So we were able to come in, the bottom corner is a little feeding station. My first priority, the first phone call was from Prices Creek, and they allowed me to talk about this. They had a problem. There was one resident that was feeding cats, and I think maybe at the time there was 10 cats on and off, but again, they are abutting Jabbertown Road. So Jabbertown Road is county. So there's a lot of back and forth between the animals. So I went in there and they had a caregiver that was feeding, and they basically wanted me to go in there and tell her, you can't feed cats anymore, it's not allowed. So I said, well, I can't do that because we have a community cat program. Let me tell you about it. So it took about 1.5 years of convincing, and I went to several HOA meetings, and we finally came up with, I explained to them, I would go in and trap, took them out, got them neutered and sprayed, and you bring them back. So, and they said, well, they're still around on our cars. And I said, so we need to remove them from the immediately area. So in their entrance, I said, there's a great place over there. As you come in, we could do a feeding station. So the cats will congregate in that feeding station and not under cars and in the rest of the neighborhood. Well, they didn't believe me, but they're like, all right, we'll try this. And lo and behold, it worked. I can say I was right. So that's their little feeding station. They were very hesitant at first, and now it's like part of their community. They put garden flags out there, they decorate at Christmas, all the holidays, it's all decorated. And they take turns buying food and feeding, and there's actually, she volunteers, the McDonald's volunteer over at the visitor center. They recently moved here. They're huge animal lovers. And they said when they drove in and they saw that, they were like, wow, this is a great community. We'd like to be part of this. So it did work. We also do kitten foster. I'm trying to start that off. We do get tons of kittens and litters of kittens found, and that's a real hard time for Brunswick County. So if I can do managed intake, we put the kittens out for foster. We hang on, they can come to your house, they can spend 6 weeks there, get socialized, and then we move them up and they get adopted up at the shelter. So that's a great program. Look for more information on that. Again, it's just a part-time roommate you have, and they're so cute. So wildlife, we are in a fantastic location for a wide variety of wildlife and wild bird species. So I also have a background in wildlife. When I moved here, I started volunteering for Mary Ellen Rogers, over in Seabiscuit. And so I got my hands dirty with pelicans and cormorants and all the rest, and I learned a little bit about them. So it was just a natural for me to be able to come over here and be an extension and help her. So the big message, and this is coexist with wildlife. This is the message that comes down from North Carolina Wildlife Resource Commission. So they mandate any interactions between humans and the wildlife in the state. So there are certain regulations and restrictions that we go by. We are very lucky here. There's an amazing, we've got the ibis over on Battery Island, which is one of the best breeding grounds in the United States on the East Coast. We're proud of that. We also have our pelicans, there's fox, possums, those are more common. We do have some surprise guests such as coyotes and of course the alligator. There are people that move here that are not aware that alligators are in North Carolina. So that's a great starting point for education. And that's, through North Carolina Wildlife, when they needed people to be able to react to these emergency calls. So we were responding to the calls anyway. The police department, APS, we're all responding to these emergency calls to handle the alligators. So they said, what a great thing for us to use you guys as resources. So if the last 2 years I've spent training, so I am now certified jurisdictional alligator handler. I have my endangered species permit. I'm allowed to touch them. I'm allowed to interact with them. So I take direction from them. It's emergent situations only. We have alligators in a swimming pool, underneath cars, stuck in a roadway. So they said, well, great, we've got you doing this. While you're there, we need some more information and data on alligators in North Carolina. Our alligators are way different than how they interact with people down in Florida and all the way up the coast. This is the northernmost part of the United States that they come to is Brunswick County and a little bit into Wilmington. Now next year I've got all my kit. We'll be able to do microchipping. We're going to be microchipping so we can track their movements, and we're doing some DNA sampling. So it's really pretty exciting. So we have also some issues. 2 years, it goes cyclical. So 2 years ago, we had an issue with fox, red fox in town. They happen to be everywhere. Some of them were not as healthy as others. They had sarcoptic mange, which is typical of fox in North Carolina. So they kind of looked a little raggedy. People saw them out during the day, automatically assume they have rabies. That's a misnomer. Any animal, possum, any of those that are out during the day, raccoons, they're simply trying to get a food source. And they're not afraid of people anymore just because they're in close proximity with us. So you see them out more. Well, people tourists down in the yacht basin area were feeding this little fox and hand feeding him hamburgers and so on. And the interactions was fatal for that little guy, and it's just not a good idea. So we formulated the sign, please resist, do not feed the wildlife. So you'll see that it's especially important, again, same with alligators, you don't want to feed them. The pelicans, our birds, they get habituated to humans, and then that's where the interactions come in that aren't healthy for anybody. Again, beware of the alligators. River mist does seem to have the largest precise alligators just because they've got so much room, and they're kind of in the perfect storm of waterways and rivers and access to everything that they come and go through there. In the springtime, it'll be time for the alligators to start mating. So they're going to start waking up now that it's around 70 degrees. They'll come up, and then that's when they get hungry. That's what triggers them to come out. And then they start mating, and they are on the move. So you'll see a lot more of them. Don't be afraid of them. They're kind of cool. They're the closest thing you're going to get to a dinosaur. So you just respect them, and they're going to go where they're going to go. They're heading to either a water source to do mating. They're not going to chase you down and eat you. So again, we love our wild neighbors. I have a lot of resources. If there is an issue, I am more than happy to help. I can answer questions. A lot of people don't like my answer. If I tell them I can't do something they think I should, then they can always call the hotline, and they're available there Monday through Friday. There's actually a wildlife biologist that's on the other end that will answer your question. A shameless plug for Nature Fest. Becca Savage from North Carolina Wildlife is going to come and do a talk on coexisting with wildlife. That's always a great resource. Just as much information as we can get out. So here's some frequently asked questions that I get all the time. Are my pets required to be licensed in Southport? And yes, I explained before, all dogs and cats within the city limits are required to be licensed annually. And you can do that all online. It's very convenient. And also, once you're on the DocuPet site, they give coupons. They give all kinds of great information. Are dogs required to be on a leash? Yes, all dogs must be under control using proper restraint. Voice commands do not count as under restraint. Will you remove an alligator from my yard? The answer to that is no, only in an emergent situation. That's mandated from North Carolina Wildlife, and if I come upon that situation, I still have to call the district biologist and ask permission to do it. And they've designated 2 places in Southport that I'm allowed to release them. So it's the closest body of water is where they're released. There's also the old misnomer, in the old days, they used to just take them out to the green swamp. Well, if you think about it, the green swamp actually isn't a swamp. It's just a marshy area. So then they're like, well, you take them out to Lake Waccamaw. Well, Lake Waccamaw, people are like, we don't want your alligators, we got enough. So, and the other thing they find is, and this is the same for any animal, if you think you're doing the right thing by taking them and moving them out somewhere else so they're out in the wild, where you're putting them in someone else's territory, and their chance of survival is almost 0. And then they spend the rest of their lives trying to get back to where they started. So it's kind of a lose-lose situation. And the big thing is who can use Taylor Field Dog Park? So all dogs are welcome to use the dog park. You just need to have a current rabies vaccination, and you need to be licensed with the City of Southport per the ordinance and then through DocuPet. And we're going to roll out the program where we have some remote access codes, and then we can also help control the gates dawn to dusk because it's within Taylor Field Park, so all parks are run from dusk to dawn. So to reinforce that, it's also pretty dark down there. The police had concerns about people being in there in the middle of the night. The neighbors had concerns about noise after dark, so that was another great way to be able to do that without the police officers having to go down and physically open and close and lock. If they're busy, that can't get done. So that's what we know. That'll be rolled out in stages, and you'll get lots of information on that. So this is what my website looks like on the City of Southport website. You can find announcements all about the department, ordinances, pet licensing, wildlife services, all the rest, and how to contact me. So you just go up to City Hall, the main page, and if you drop down, it says City Departments, and then all of our departments are listed there. And there is a lot of great information on our website, and it's pretty easy to navigate. So thank you for your time.
Any questions? Yes, sir? You have to go up to the mic. Thank you. You must. Yes, please. It's only so the public can hear. That's in TV land.
I think compliments should be made in person. Kate, if that was one of the is this button? No, it's now red. Oh, red means go. Okay, let's talk to the traffic department about that. That's just one of the best presentations I've seen a city official give. Outstanding. As a current River Road client, thank you for your time there, and also the DocuPet process is so easy to do. It really is easy to do, and getting that word out to more people would be beneficial. Do you do visits to HOAs? I've heard you talk about River Mist, and if our HOA said, hey, we'd love to have you come share this to educate people, would you do that?
Yes, I go to HOAs. Prices Creek specifically wanted information on the community cats, but River Mist wanted on alligators, but I'd be happy, just my contact information, grab my card, I'd be happy to.
Super, because we have one or two. I'm in a little 100-home neighborhood called Cades Cove, and so we frequently get alligator visits, and we get neighbors who say, I think it's being aggressive, who do I call? And first you have to tell them you really can't unless it's like on your front porch. Is it threatening your grandchild when they're there? But classically, we've had them call the chief. Should that call go to you now, APS, if there's an alligator issue in a neighborhood?
Either one. Chief Coring always forwards them on to me, and there was a picture there. The police always respond with me. I can't do it by myself. There's
sure.
an alligator tube. I have it outside, and there was pictures of it. They assist me. Most of the pictures of Chief Coring, you'll see him standing behind me, but he is there to assist.
We
yes.
have pictures of him in our neighborhood with an alligator in a garbage can, so we have firsthand evidence of that. I guess I was just looking for protocol on point of contact, because the police have multi-responsibilities. Thank you, Kate. Now, Bonnie, a question on paving the streets. There have always been issues in Southport. I'm a 10-year resident of Southport about the condition of streets. Is there a specific plan at this point in time in terms of paving? What's next on the docket? Because obviously the work on Howe has been exemplary. As a resident, we thank you for that. But there's a lot more to do. Is there a posting of a schedule, 5-year plan, 10-year plan? If not, will we have one?
Yes, you will. Interesting you're saying that. Our first part-time engineer started today, and that's exactly what I asked him to do because that's his background. And no, there is no plan right now. We need to have one. I think it's great because that way, as the money comes in, it's easy to divvy it out. I'm used to where cities will hire a pavement management company that comes in and drives every street. Our new part-time engineer thinks that he has work, he's a retired engineer, he's got a lot of experience, and he said that he feels he can put something together for us to work with, and that's going to help us a lot. But you are right. I mean, right now, the only monies that are put aside are the Powell bill monies, and we could probably use a lot more. But the other thing we got to be careful of, all those sewer projects, we go into construction, you will kill me if I pave a road, and then this gets dug up with the sewer work. So we're also got to be cognizant of that. But
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Again, thank you.
Yeah, I'm trying to put together a 10-year capital improvement program because there isn't that either. So we have a lot to do. Thank you. You're welcome. May I just say that Kate is one of the best alligator whisperers we have. All right, this is your time, ladies and gentlemen. Any questions, comments? Anything that you can think of? We've all left business cards out there, so if you want to pick one up, you'll know how to get in touch with all of us. And may I say before we move on, that our Mayor Pro Tem is here, Karen Mosteller. 2 of our aldermen are here, Lo Davis, Rich Alt, raise your hand. And they are here, so if you have any questions for them too, you could ask either one-on-one or in front of everyone. Any other questions or comments? Cheyenne, there's rating sheets out there? Because I really want to make sure that you all, this is the first time we're doing this, we need your feedback.
I will be emailing with the email that you registered, and if you're one of our walk-ins, if you'll come see me so I can just get that written down, I will be sending that out because it's easier for me to keep track with in a digital format, but there will be, it's very short, it'll take maybe 90 seconds, feedback form for you guys to let us know how we did.
We have another question.
Yes. Kate, I don't have a dog, I don't have a cat, got a couple of birds that I don't really want, but anyway. I did have an alligator come up to my back door a few years ago, but that's not what I want to ask you to do. Would you back up on your presentation to the map of the city limits of Southport? It was up near the front. And my question, while you're pulling that up, is to Travis and to development. Is this a new map of the city of Southport limits? Because in the past, I have looked, Karen has looked, when we were working, thinking about the Preservation Commission, where are the city limits? So does this include everything we have in the way of city limits here for Southport? And is this available on the website? That's my main question.
Just for reference, I pulled this up, I Googled it, because most of our maps are huge. It was a rough estimate. It's not specific with ETJ and those surrounding areas, but it did include Southport Crossing and River Mist.
Also, as things get annexed in, the map changes, and sometimes it's hard to get everything to catch up to where we're at now, especially we've had so many staff changes, but we do try to keep up with it as best we can. If you ever need to see the map, you can certainly contact me and I'll be happy to forward one to you.
The map is also located on the city website under Development Services. There is a section of all of the different Southport maps and jurisdiction outlines. That's that is as recent as what we have.
They all said exactly what I was going to say, so.
Okay. Now, I have tried to do that, Cheyenne and others, to go on the website and pulled up a map of the city limits of Southport. And I get put over to a county thing that's huge, and then there's something on top of it and all of that sort of thing. So that's why I was delighted to see this, even if it's not totally accurate. Maybe we can take something like this into the development department, which comes under Dory, which comes under Bonnie, which comes under the alderman, to get us a simple map so that we can see, because when we ask people to volunteer for committees and other things volunteers can do here in the city, many times they have to be a resident of the city of Southport. And so if you're in one of the newer areas or a newer jurisdiction or whatever, am I a resident? How far out Moore Street? How far out Leonard Street is the city limits? So that would be very helpful, I think, to make one as simple as possible. And then I also have a question, because I tuned in last week to the alderman's discussion about what they were going to talk about Thursday night at the meeting, and I was happy, very happy to hear Travis's explanations and exclamations about code enforcement. And I see this still falls under your family tree. So I was curious then to find out who is our code enforcement person here in Southport. And I'm sorry to say I don't know him, I've never seen him. Or Chris Martin, is that correct? So then I wanted to see what Chris does, what his job is. So I was able to go on the code and find out, and what I think I found out, so you can correct me, is that he is kind of in charge of some trash stuff, things that are left on roadsides, abandoned cars, that sort of thing. But it looks pretty limited as to what the code enforcement officer does when we have a lot of ordinances that do not get enforced, particularly as Travis was talking about in that meeting, road right-of-way. And we, old time, as I'm saying, 26-year residents of this city, know that that does not get enforced. And so I applaud the city's efforts to try to work on that and to educate the public. And perhaps the first educational opportunity will be the 4th of July, when we let homeowners know that they cannot block their right-of-ways, and they can't stand out there with the Rottweiler glaring at people who might think that they're going to park in the 10-foot zone there. So thank you for addressing that, and I'm looking forward to more code enforcement. Thank you.
And just to add to that, our code enforcement officer, his primary goal is to monitor all of the topics that are in our code of ordinances for the city. He does help with development services if there's signage that's out that's incorrect, landscaping out to the road, things like that. He will help coordinate efforts with Travis and the other planning staff to get those issues taken care of, but he can only enforce the code of ordinances within the city limits, the corporate city limits.
And just so you know, that's Travis Henley, who's our Director of Development Services, and in the coming months, you will hear from his department also. If there's anything else, or if there's even ways we could improve the city or things you would like to see, also please feel free to email me. You can mention it today. I'm open to all kinds of thoughts and ideas of ways, you know, I mean, cities can always improve. We can do things better, but we need the citizens' input in order to do that too. So if you have any thoughts, please, and spread the word on these sessions. I think they're very important. I think the next one is communications.
All right, to piggyback off of what Bonnie was saying, the next one will be March 13th, same time, 2 to 3:34-ish, here in the community building, and it's going to be the Community Relations Department, so that's myself, Randy, and Elena in the back as well, to chat with y'all about tourism, communications, what our department does, and how we serve you guys as our community members. Sorry, I'm trying to get to the end of the slideshow. But we do want to thank you all again for taking the time out of your day to join us both in person and online. There will be a brief feedback survey that I'm going to email out to everybody. Again, if you are one of our walk-ins, if you could stop by and see me at the back of the table or catch me in the front by the check-in table so that I can just jot that down really quickly, that would be awesome. And if you have your smartphone out and you wanted to go ahead and register for March, this QR code will take you to that registration, so that way you don't have to go on the city website. But if you would like to wait till you get home, it is on the city website under calendar of events, and if you just go to March 13th, you'll have that information there with the registration form. So since Travis is here, I'm going to shout him out too. His is on April 17th, so that will be the development services. So our next two, March 13th for community relations, April 17th for development services. So thank you all.
Before you go, I always like to have a quiz. So we have a quick quiz for all of you if you want to shout out. I think we passed these out?
Yes, they were. They're at the front table.
Yeah. So Dory put it together so she can just shout out if you think you know the answer. If you don't, we'll give it to you just so you know a little bit more about your community.
What does salubrious mean?
Because the public can't hear it.
Yes. It means favorable to or promoting health or well-being. What year was Southport founded and under what name? I believe I heard the young lady at the front, 1792, and it was named Smithville. Approximately how far is Southport inland from the Atlantic Ocean? It's only 2 miles. What is the median age for the city of Southport? I'm sorry. Getting warmer. 59.6 years.
Before you go on, I got to tell you the story. So I had sent to the board and the department heads the newest census information. Randy's the one who saw this. And it says for fertility rate, zip up.
It actually says NA, not applicable.
So I thought that was pretty funny.
How long was Fort Johnson in active federal service? It actually was the oldest active duty fort in the United States. 250 years. What is the name of the bronze 6-pound cannon that can be found beside the Indian Trail Meeting Hall? Thor. How many historic monuments and markers are there in Southport? 38. When was the first 4th of July festival in Southport recorded? 1795. And then the question was, name at least 3 films or shows that were filmed in Southport. And you know, there are many, many, many to choose from. Oh, last one. How many departments does Southport have? There's 9 without including administration, but if you count that, there's 10. That's all I've got. Thank you all for attending.
All for coming. Spread the word.